Greetings, everyone. My name is Cedric Spencer, the International Social Action Chair for Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. Thank you for joining us this evening. As you know, this upcoming election, every vote counts. It is the most consequential election of our lifetime. In 2016, only 56% of the eligible Black voters participated in the election, compared to 66% in 2012. There was a difference of how Black females voted versus Black males. 94% of Black females who voted supported Clinton, but she only received 80% of the Black male vote. In fact, 13% of Black males voted for Donald Trump. So both parties are fighting for the Black vote, but most importantly, the Black male vote. And this is why we're here today. We have an awesome panel to discuss why Blacks must vote. But before we start, our Grand Chaplain will lead us in a prayer. After the Grand Chaplain, our moderator, the Grand Bossless of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, Brother David Marion, will begin the conversation. Brother Grand Chaplain, you have the virtual floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Brother Spencer. Brothers, let's pray together. Gracious God of our weary years and silent tears, we heartily thank you for bringing us together and for bringing us thus far on our way. We thank you for grace and mercy extended to us from our mother's womb, and we owe you so much praise and thanks. We thank you for the victories that have come our way simply because we dared to pray and put you first ahead of our aspirations. Loving Creator, we understand the fierce urgency of now. We understand why we cannot wait for another team, another time, another turn to exercise our right to vote. Thank you for this time together tonight as we seek to empower our brothers and others of darker hue. We pray that you will also empower our leader, Dr. David Marion, and other brother panelists to not only inspire us, but to incite us to do what is best during this critical and consequential election. We pray that as a direct result of our time together, there will be an extremely high percentage of voter turnout from all people, especially those, the male voters, the Black male voter. We pray that no suppression will diminish our enthusiasm or quiet our voices or stop our votes. We pray that no provocation will move us away from our goals or deter our motives. Give us, O Lord, the strength and the courage of our convictions to vote like our very lives depend on it. And oh God, if you do each and every one of these things that we've asked tonight, do these things for us and we'll be careful to pause and give you thanks. It's in the matchless name of that Negro from Nazareth, named Jesus, that we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Brother Grand Chaplain, Dr. Walter T. Richardson. We thank you for your leadership, your spiritual leadership of this great fraternity. We also want to thank Brother Cedric Spencer for his leadership of the International Social Action Committee. He's done an outstanding job throughout this election season. And we appreciate this symposium called The Final Stretch. We know that this presentation is open to not only members of the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, but also members of the other Divine Nine and others who are not members of a fraternity or sorority. And in this day and time, all of us have to come together for the season in which we now find ourselves. This symposium is called The Final Stretch. And I certainly want to greet you on behalf of almost 200,000 initiated men in 750 chapters in 15 countries of an organization we love, the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated. And I stand here as their Grand Bossless. I want to thank our panelists. We first have Paul Anderson, who is the assistant to the Grand Bossless. He is he served 2 years as the international undergraduate representative to the Supreme Council. He is a recent graduate of the University of North Carolina at Pembroke. And so we appreciate his youthful appearance and what he will bring to this discussion from a young African male's perspective. Also want to thank D.L. Hughley, our brother D.L. Hughley, actor, political commentator, radio host, author. I said author already. I said actor, author though as well, and stand-up comedian. And so we're pleased to have both of these brothers joining me and the men of the Omega Psi Phi fraternity this evening to discuss the choices facing our nation. We also want to tell you that this is a fast-paced hour, probably an hour and 10 minutes. We may have some drop-ins by our fraternity brother, Rickey Smiley, if he gets a chance to swing by. And also our Rickey's already in the house. Look at Rickey in the house already. Look at you, brother. Good to see you, man.
Yeah. I've been sitting here an hour. I'm ready.
All right. Well, we know you're ready. We thank you, brother. We know Rickey Smiley, stand-up comedian, television host, actor, and radio personality. Our fraternity brother. We love him. We appreciate him so much. He represents the Omega Psi Phi fraternity well. We also may have a pop-in by Steve Harvey. I'm going to see if Steve's going to do the same thing you did, Rickey. I don't know if he's on go already like that. Steve Harvey may poke his head in. But let's get in it. Voting is underway in most of the country, and initial reports indicate an extraordinary high voter turnout, especially among African Americans. Our goal this evening is to continue the momentum through Election Day. We know this is an election season, and November 3rd is the last day to vote. There is a phrase that is relevant to this election, and it is never let your emotions overpower your intelligence. Hitler once said, how good it is for rulers that men don't think. When I was young, old folks would talk about going to the polls, and they would say that they were going to vote between Satan and the devil. But regardless of their choices, they voted. They knew the sacrifices that were made to have a right to vote and the power that came with the act of voting. Representative Clyburn, our fraternity brother, said, God Almighty is not on the ballot. Representative Marcia Fudge, our sorority sister, said, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. With that, what do we say to the unenthusiastic voter? The voter who knows they should vote, but they are still upset about the primary, can't get excited about this election, or disillusioned about the political process. What would you say, Brother Smiley, about why you vote and why this unenthusiastic voter should do the same?
First of all, thank you for this opportunity. I'm proud and honored to be here. I think it's very important that we vote. I was born and raised in Birmingham, Alabama, back here in the South, in the heart of Dixie, as they say. When you join the church, you had to become a member of the NAACP right when you give your life to Christ. My pastor was Reverend Edwin Gardner. He was one of Dr. King's soldiers. The pastor study was filled with pictures with our pastor and Dr. King. He was one of the original members of the SCLC. So I've been a lifetime member of the NAACP and the SCLC. I participated in my first march when Benita Carter was murdered, a Black woman who was shot in the back by a white police officer, George Sand, in 1979. I'll never forget it. All the civil rights leaders came to Birmingham, and there was riots here before any of this stuff. And I saw it with my own eyes. I was a kid when the police came through the projects and shut out all of the street lights and just the riots that was going on in Birmingham. And I've been active ever since. It's important. People have made ultimate sacrifices for us to vote. Medgar Evers was killed, Dr. King, Representative John Lewis. People have paid a heavy price for us to have the opportunity that we have. And no, things are not going to be perfect. No, we're not going to get everything that we want, but you have to vote. As far as the young kids, I struggle with that because I'm really angry at them right now. It's something about this new generation, these millennials, that just something you can't. It's hard to reach them. But I have been effective in reaching young men in their 30s, their 30s and their 40s, because we get testimonials all the time. We play this particular speech at the top of the hour, every hour on my radio show, by the pastor in Alexandria, Virginia. Made a powerful speech about how dare you not vote. That's what I call it, how dare you not vote. And it's so powerful. And I drop a little Marvin Gaye instrumental up under it, and it would bring you to tears. So I thought that this speech was so good that I would play it at the top of the hour. So I have gotten so many testimonies of men that said that they were not going out to vote, that's in their 30s and 40s, that said they going out as first-time voters because they heard that particular clip that we play every single day at the top of the hour. So that's 3 times a day, every day for the past 2 weeks, leading all the way up until election day. And but the younger guys, the millennials, the conspiracy theorists like my son or whatever, it's just hard to have a conversation. I get so mad, I just can't deal with my son around election time. You can't make them do nothing or whatever. You just have to just try to focus on the ones that will listen and that want to vote. I don't know what to do because I don't. But
that might be a good segue to Paul. Paul's a young brother, and maybe you can speak to what Rickey was talking about in terms of young people and some of the unenthusiasm we see.
Absolutely, Bro Grand. Thank you for the opportunity. It's an honor and a privilege to be able to speak and represent. I think one of the biggest things is that, us as young people, we just don't feel like our vote counts. Unfortunately, we have been led to believe, and the statistics and the signs and everything that we've been fed through these devices right here that we see tells us that no matter what you do, no matter how you vote, no matter how much you yell, scream, throw a temper tantrum, that in the grand scheme of things, will it really matter? And I think that it's that spirit of feeling defeated before you even come to the polls that's really stopping young voters, those first-time voters, from actually coming out. But I think that there is a little bit of encouragement to be given here, which is in some of the battleground states. I saw this a few days ago. A friend of mine shared it with me. Then some of these battleground states, in my home state, North Carolina, there was about maybe 25,000 that were voting around this time in 2016. But now there's over 200,000 voting in North Carolina alone. But I think the biggest thing is that they just feel defeated. And I think the key to reaching them is for them to realize that their voice counts and that their vote counts. Not simply just for a presidential election, but for these local elections, for them to get involved. And the reality is, when you're so caught up in this and everything that you get and receive is through this device, you don't really pay attention to what's going on in your community until it directly affects you.
Okay. Dio, what do you think? The unenthusiastic voter, just in general, know they need to vote, but they're just not enthused by this ticket. Again, I'll say that Brother Clyburn said God Almighty is not on the ballot. But what do you think we could say to get that unenthusiastic voter out to the polls?
Well, thank you for your invitation, Brother Grant. It's a pleasure to be here. I'll see you, Brother Paul, in about 2 hours, I'm sure, on something. It's good to see you too. And this is the first time I've seen you since you've been my friend. Good to see you, Rick. But I just wanted to say that we have to take our part as a society in general, because we allow people to make it harder to vote. As things have gotten more and more convenient, you can get an app, have an app that can bring you virtually everything you want, from cars to food to alcohol in some cases, virtually everything you want. But we made voting harder, and so there is a certain level of responsibility that we, who have been voting for a while, have to we have to take a level of responsibility in that. But and I also think that it's a pragmatic thing. I understand. I don't like going to the doctor. I'm never enthusiastic about it, but I understand that if I go, it increases my chances of having a longer, healthier life. You may not be enthusiastic about school, but you understand that having an education makes inroads that you couldn't make by yourself. And so enthusiasm shouldn't be a requirement. I mean, that's obvious. But you're not enthusiastic about having a balanced diet, but you understand the results of it. But really, on a more basic level, you are voting whether you're showing up to do it or not. Your silence is filled by a vacuum, and that
Right.
vacuum is generally used by the people who represent the vote. Old white people will decide how our country goes because we're not there. Put it at a basic level. Once you become an adult, would you let your parents set the rules of your house? Would you let somebody come in and tell you what you had to do? And that is what you do when you don't vote. When you don't vote, you're letting other people set the rules of the house. Even people who have protests at the end, after they finish marching, they have to march to a politician or a legislator to enact the things that they are asking for. So all of, and I think particularly in this time, and I think it's a very stark example, the country has yelled Black Lives Matter. And if Black men don't show up at the polls in the hopes of changing those things into actual legislation that help us, i.e. police reform, some of the things that deal with systemic biases, then people will see if it's not important to us, because everybody can't vote for our survival on a higher level than we do. So it's a very basic thing. Black people don't vote for enthusiasm. Black people vote to survive. So literally, I think that's what we're talking about: the propagation of a species, our survival.
One of the initiatives going on right now with the fraternities is an initiative called Black Men Vote. And all of the fraternities are working hard to get out 1 million more African-American men to the polls. And so you saw us do a town hall meeting with Derek Johnson, president of the NAACP. We've gotten an outstanding response on that. And our focus has been on that because the sorority presidents have done a good job in getting out Black women to vote. And so we wanted to do our job because, in 1870, when the 15th Amendment was ratified, it granted Black men the right to vote. But that's when you started having issues of voter suppression and intimidation. And so my question to you is that there's many people in the African-American community that don't seem to believe that voter suppression and intimidation still exists today. How do we get our people to see that reality and the reality that DL just talked about of the barriers to vote, the barriers to vote, the difficulty of getting to the polls, having the time to invest in waiting in long lines, having jobs that do not allow you time off to vote, not having sufficient child care or adequate transportation. All of these can be insurmountable barriers if there is not enough help to navigate them. How do we do that? Let me start off with you, Dia.
Well, I think it's you just nailed it. Look, when they steal your mailboxes, that lets you know they don't want you to put nothing in them. Like when literally they've stolen the mailboxes, they've stacked the justices. Right now, they insisted on. Right now, many of you who are not voting and asking for regress for the government in terms of stimulus checks. Well, they would rather put in a Supreme Court justice that yields the result they want in terms of some civil rights acts, in terms of some voting rights acts. They would rather do that than help you. But the bottom line is this: why have such extreme measures always been aimed at mitigating Black vote? And why is it right now that Black women have gone through exactly some of the things people don't really understand that. I don't think we've ever seen what has happened to Black women in history, from women who literally were raped and brutalized and sold and had to still hold a family together, to using their political wit and wherewithal and demographic power to make sure that president had to pick a Black woman. He had to do it. And they didn't do it with saber rattling. They didn't do it with bellicosity. They didn't do it with being belligerent. They were insistent. They showed up in large numbers and they wielded political power. And if Black men want some of the things that we know we need for our family, it is our responsibility to take care of our woman, not just from a physical fight or not just to keep a roof over her head. It's our responsibility to make her life easier and our children's life easier. And one of the things you do that, unfortunately, is through the democratic voting process. Black women right now has showed us what consistent. If you look at Alabama, where Rickey lives, they were able. Black women voted at 96%. Doug Jones was elected, but it was that 94% of Black women and the Black men came out and voted. I get a white dude riding to the poll down the street to the polls on a horse might have helped, but I'm telling you that all of a sudden that melding of black women and black men working together showed us what we can do. I think that their ability to have their wishes met and Kamala Harris being the vice presidential candidate shows us what we can do. And the fact that they're scrambling right now, the Supreme Court ruled yesterday that in Wisconsin it wouldn't count votes after mail-in votes after a certain day. Why do they want you not to do it? Because they want to keep you where you are, and if you stay where you are, you're an accomplice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Rickey, you know, being from Alabama and I'm from Mississippi, so you and I know about black folks trying to vote and them being asked how many bubbles are in a bar of soap, how many bumps on a cucumber, right? How many seeds in the watermelon, asking you questions that you knew you couldn't answer in order to prevent you from voting. DL talked some about the voter suppression tactics today. Why do you think there are some in our community that still don't believe that's real?
I think a lot of people don't care. You know, and that's what I see. You know, some of the younger generation, their entire attitude towards, you know, for example, just like my 30-year-old son, it's just really tough to have a conversation with him about certain things, and that's just he's just part of the demographic that's out there. And you know, when I was my son's age, I was always seeking knowledge. I want to learn. I want to talk to somebody older. Well, if I'm wrong about this or whatever, show me the way, teach me, you know, enlighten me. So you know, I won't be ignorant and saying ignorant things on social media. But it's an argument because they believe what they believe in. It's just hard to convince them. But I just try to focus on the people that want to learn and the people that listen. And we just try to produce a good show every morning just to get the information out by having on Biden surrogates and Jeff Johnson and, you know, anybody that would come on that could offer any type of, you know, knowledge, you know, to talk about the importance of voting. Damn, I forgot what was the question again? Did I answer the question?
Yeah, you answered it.
But that ADHD ain't no joke.
You answered it, man. Paul, what do you think about that? Because the voter suppression and intimidation now are things like voter ID cards, gerrymandering, felon disenfranchisement. So, I mean, what are your thoughts as a young person? Do you believe there are still voter suppression and intimidation tactics going on?
Oh, without a doubt. You know, as has been so eloquently stated, these things are still going on, and that's a fact. And to quote Lil Baby, they know that we are problem together. They know we can storm any weather. If our votes did not matter, they would not be going to the extent that they are to stop us from voting. If our votes did not matter 100 years ago, 200 years ago, then they would have said, go ahead, do whatever you want to do. And they wouldn't have tried to keep us enslaved. They wouldn't have tried to keep us down where we were in the trenches, as many of us still are. The reality is this suppression is happening in multiple different ways, like you mentioned, with gerrymandering and also with voter registration cards. In the state of North Carolina, you can register to vote on site during early voting. But come election day, that's not necessarily the same case, if memory serves correctly. So there are things like that where you hear about these things, and it's not bad information, but it sometimes is misinformation, or you hear one thing and then one person says it to another, and you're playing telephone like you're in grade school again. You start to forget about it. But some of that suppression and intimidation is coming again through social media, because almost every 18 to 30-year-old person spends a large portion of their day on social media. And when you see so many things that say, oh, this is happening, and this is happening, and this person is bad, and this person is bad, and this person is bad, it again feeds into the narrative that, oh, well, no matter what you do, it's not going to change it. Just focus on you and what you have to do, and that's all you need to worry about. Keep doing all the stuff you're doing, but don't go out and vote. I think that there are tactics that are being taken behind the scenes in the media in which we consume that feeds into this narrative that votes do not matter. Because that's where a bit of the apathy comes from. That feeds into the conspiracy theories. I have quite a few friends, like Brother Smiley was talking about, who they're all into the conspiracy theories, and that's all that they can think about, and that's all that they go off of. But then you bring up something that's actually tangible in front of them, they shy away from the conversation in favor of what they want to talk about.
Yeah. I like that, because I was listening to some young folks talk about voting, and I heard one of them quoting Joseph Stalin, and I said, let me listen, because I didn't. They're deep if they're going to Joseph Stalin, right? But the point was, it does not matter who votes. What matters is who counts the votes. And I thought, now, damn, why they had to find that quote out of all of them? You know what I mean? Because that buys into what you're saying, that votes don't matter and you shouldn't vote. DL in Memphis, they had something called tent cities. You may know about that, a freedom village.
Right.
And that's where African Americans who did nothing but register to vote, their landlords would put them out of their houses. They would evict them. And they would in turn could not find any other places to live, and would have to set up tents. And they formed this thing called a freedom village. And you also know the initial tactic was, if you registered to vote, you could get killed. You could die just for registering. You could die. Our ancestors would put on their suits, their ties and dresses, and get in their Sunday best to go vote, knowing that there was a chance of them dying. Now, regrettably, we're hearing about the possibility that, and we know voter suppression really occurs on election day, November 3rd, but now we're hearing of the possibility of militias being out, DL, when we're trying to vote. Share your thoughts on that.
Well, ultimately, this is the sad but just sober reality, is that almost every advantage, every right that we have gotten has been over the protests of men like that, men who were going to be violent toward it. I mean, if black people, whether Hank Aaron wanted to break a home run record, or Obama became first president or the first person on the moon, black people, the idea of embracing the American dream and doing what it is that is quintessentially American, voting, buying a home, ascending, professionally, all those things are met generally with somebody telling you they'll take your life for it. Right now, if somebody tells you a scientific fact, you could be killed. Right now, Leslie Stahl did an interview with Donald Trump, but people have to realize this. When things are close to dying, when a way or a person or an idea is close to extinction, it fights that much harder to live. And I would say this, back to what Brother Paul was saying, when we know now that one of the things that the Russians did successfully was mitigate the black vote by spreading misinformation on exactly the devices that we were just discussing. The Russians knew that they could affect an apathetic community. People that never grew up in the gut, that's just how well known it is. The Russians knew that if I do this moral equivalency where they're the same, like you'll hear people telling you that they're the same thing. Oh, it's it's the lesser of two evils. Now, literally, even at that, there should be a certain level of competency. There's a certain level of people that when you put a game show host in charge of the worst pandemic in history, you're going to get a reality show nobody wanted, and that affects us. There are people who are literally disproportionately black people and brown people and poor people are dying, and old people, black people, poor people, and brown people are dying at disproportionate rates because we have a man in office who wouldn't even do the very basic thing of trying to do his job. So people's apathy, not going to the polls, believing that moral equivalency, that she's just as bad as him, cost black people lives. There are black people dead right now because you decided you can't go to your grandmother's house right now. You can't graduate now. You can't go to a mall. You can't go and do the things you're supposed to be doing right now because you didn't make a competent choice to put them in office. And now your life has been impacted in a very real, tangible way. Even now, look at the places right now in Mississippi, where a good brother Grant lives. Right now, they find the disproportionate level of black people are wearing the mask and adhering to science. And a lot of rural people are not, and the effect of the virus is changing. You need, at least at a very basic level, to make a choice at who you believe is competent enough to at least protect you. And not doing that costs tens of thousands of black and brown people's lives.
Wow.
That's outstanding. Rick, you wanted to get in on that? Say anything on that?
No, DL said it all. DL, I'm really nervous about, election night. Let's say Joe Biden wins the election or whatever. I just have this bone-chilling fear that white militia and white supremacists are going to take on the streets and kill people. And I think that they have been encouraged by the president of the United States. How do you feel about that, and what are your thoughts? And then the second question to you, DL, or if anybody want to answer, how do y'all feel about the momentum of the Biden campaign?
DL, I think he was starting off with you about that race war that we've heard about.
And honestly, what have you had that somebody didn't try to take from you? The one thing that black men, out of all we talk about, we never talk about safety for ourselves because it's such an abstract concept. We were put here, and the reason I joined this fraternity and with you brothers right now is because I know that it takes us and men like us and women like us to understand that these are the realities of where we are right now. We have to change the terms of this argument. And the only way we do that, as to my armed insurrection, certainly is not the answer. What is a political prowess and wherewithal that we wield for our benefit. That we will for our benefit, just like everybody else does. Black women have shown us that it yields tangible results. And yes, I'm nervous, and so are they. When somebody's threatening you, when somebody tells you that and look at all the people. Have you ever seen black people get in lines this long to do something early? Have you ever seen that? Like
No.
The new Jordan, it ain't the Popeye chicken sandwich. It is people. It was an example of a woman. She went to the real prominent school in Baltimore, and she didn't get her. It was a medical school, and the name escapes me. Hopkins, and she didn't get her mail-in ballot. She drove all the way to. She lived in Florida. Took a flight to Florida. Took an Uber to the voting place. Voted and came back. Our numbers are in record high. There was an older woman who, because of black woman, she was 93 years old. She had to leave Detroit and live with her son in Chicago. She made him drive him 300 miles to vote. You look. There are record numbers of people voting. The numbers are in place, and you have. This is what people do not seem to understand, and I can't stress this enough. Biden support is among older white people, white women, educated white women, and black people. That is a coalition that never has existed before, and there's a commonality in that we can use to get some tangible results for some things. They have agreed that we will form this coalition to do something. So you've never seen old black people, old white people, black people, young suburban, educated suburban women, Latin people over here. So the coalition that they formed is people that the military. He's leading in the military. So the coalition that he's forming is different than everybody, but it also can potentially yield us more opportunities. So yes, it is scary for a lot of people. And when he dog whistles, he knows his best opportunity is intimidation. And if our ancestors, brothers who led us, can get dogs sicked on them and can have, be threatened to be killed, right there on the spot and no legal recourse, then we have our part in this. And to kind of break that cycle, but to understand that as it stands right now, that's a reality, and we have to meet that challenge. It's just that serious.
Let me get Paul to speak to that second question, Brother Smiley. You brought up about what do you think about Joe Biden's momentum? Do you see it as momentum, Paul?
Honestly, I think that's the best way to describe it. I don't know if it's the perfect word, but I think it's the best way to describe it, because the reality is this, like has already been said before, when you back a dog into a corner, he shows his teeth because he's scared and because he is afraid. I teach students, and what you see time and time again with people, whether that's middle, elementary, high school, postgraduate, college, when you call them out on something and they start to be scared and afraid, their true colors show, and it's the worst side of them that shows. And because those people before who were blindly following are the current resident of the Oval Office blindly following him because they didn't want to vote for Hillary, for Democrats or whoever, they're finally starting to see, oh, this is not the way. And I was wrong and I was incorrect. And along with that, you're starting to see more of these things happen. Like how do we suddenly go from a pandemic to 2 Supreme Court justices? How does that happen? How was that at the top of the agenda? And the American people, Black people, are calling out the hypocrisy. Black people are seeing there is another way. And obviously it helps when you have a person who looks like you running and advocating on your behalf. Obviously that helps, but I definitely think it's momentum. If not because of the points that he is giving and the points that she is giving, but because of the fact of the American people's eyes are open. They can see exactly what is going on. And no matter how many ads you buy to show up on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Snapchat to try to endorse your campaign, it does not change the truth.
There you go.
Wow.
We're getting some questions from YouTube, and I just want to pass them on. We talked about this, but I just want to see if anybody else. How do you change voter apathy? I think we started off the discussion. Anybody want to just say something short to that for this particular person who's asking that question?
You know, it's interesting, Brother Grant. I will say this. We don't have to change empathy. A pandemic did it for us. The loss of job. This is, you know what America's going through right now? Pain compliance. This is pain. You have a president that told you, if you listen to this president in the last 6 months, for everything from ingesting bleach, literally taking bleach, not wearing masks. See, the thing that he has that you don't have is the finest medical advancement in the world. All we got is Big Mama prayer warriors. That's what we got. So this is not, I don't think this is a crisis. This is not America having a moment of conscience. This is America having a moment of crisis. You know what? We all Black today. Today, everybody's Black. Everybody's dying. Everybody's suffering. Children, when you ask me about, you can't go outside. Why? You can't go to school and learn amongst your peers. Why? You can't go to the mall without a mask. Why? If somebody, you can't help your grandmother. Why? You can't go to you can't even put your family, or if something happens to your family, whether it's a happy moment or a sad one, you can't be around them. Why? Why is he not home? It is not a crisis of conscience. Apathy caused this. A pandemic is making apathy causes. In other words, you had a man in the office, put a man in an administration. It's depending on where you live. It depends on how you determine how you're going to deal with this. Not even a unified approach. With the United States of America, but divided against the pandemic. Apathy caused that. The pandemic and pain and suffering and loss of life and property is why we're here now. And that happened for a reason.
Good stuff. Good stuff. There's a question of, are we aware of any resources for transportation to the polls? And I will say that all of the Divine Nine, the chapters, are giving individuals those options in their community for transportation to the polls. There are other agencies too as well. Anyone else know of any others other than Divine Nine that's doing that? I know churches do that as well. Anything come to your minds that may have been given to you all to tell to your listeners?
I'm sure that in every city in the United States, especially in our cities where you have a lot of Black folks, that between the churches and the fraternities and sororities and social and savings clubs, everybody's giving rise to the polls. From what I understand, I see a lot of stuff on the internet as to where people been making commitments to take people to the polls and taking 10 people to vote, not just taking themselves to vote, but that's everywhere. Just like, it kind of remind me of the bus boycott, and I see a lot of that going on.
Okay.
I hear about it a lot.
Okay. Let me ask another question there. How can the Divine Nine drive a better voice with elected officials to address the Black agenda? Anybody want to take a stab at that?
I think that ultimately we have to decide what the Black agenda is. I think that you and I have had occasion to talk about that. We need to have much like I think that Black women, as often is the case, have showed us exactly what we need to do. We need to be specific and unified. You can't say they meet our demand. You know, the one thing I can fault us for, and as a big a fan as I was of President Obama, it was that we didn't hold him accountable. We didn't demand things. And even, I don't care how much you love a coach or how much you love your parents, how much you love anybody that's been impressionable, made an impression on you. They had demands from you and you rose to them. And you were better because of it. And I think that we have to learn that we are a powerful group of people when we are united. We have to have a level of specificity to our demands and the tenacity. Look, you wouldn't be in office right now, or wouldn't even have this shot right now if it wasn't for us. That costs something. That costs something. The thing that we need to articulate is the asks, and they need to be specific, and they need to be all encompassing, and they need to be. I think sometimes even the lead in our water that leads to mass incarceration too. If we want to stop mass incarceration, if we want to stop, mass incarceration, if we want to do something about the educational gap and the wealth gap, all those things can be solved by pragmatic measures. If you have more Black teachers teaching more Black people, that leads to the potential for higher education. If you have more Black doctors and healthcare professionals, that raises if a Black woman is treated by a Black doctor, her chances of having a successful outcome go up exponentially. If we want to stop people from going to prison, we clean our air and our water. We know what lead does. Most of the people, young brothers and sisters who are in prison right now, they have high concentrations of lead. So there are things that we can do. Several things regarding the environment, regarding the wealth gap, regarding the educational gap, prison reform that can be solved with very pragmatic measures, but they require us talking together and forming a consensus and having very specific, very doable asks.
Yeah. We talked about this next question. How do brothers on the panel feel about the record voting numbers? I think we're all excited about seeing these Black folks vote early. The next question was, how do we cultivate and encourage brothers of Omega to run for political office? And let me just say to this, I really like the organization that the Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated created here recently, which is the Omega Network for Action. I just think this is going to be an opportunity to really educate brothers on how to run for office, how to raise funds, how to be sharp in debates and prepare them for that. We're going to announce this once the election is over, but I'll take a point to announce it here, that after the election, the Omega Network for Action is going to announce the James Clyburn Institute that will focus on helping brothers of Omega Psi Phi learn how to run for office, learn how to research issues and take stands on them, and then articulate their positions on those issues. Let me ask anyone else, though, how would we cultivate? That's the last question we have right now from YouTube. What would any recommendations from you all on how we can cultivate and encourage brothers of Omega to run for office? And
Brother Grant, if I could add something to that, and
okay.
This is making me think more and more about my own personal experiences. And you bring up Brother Clyburn, I can't help but think about my good friend and brother Kenton Kelly, from my district from South Carolina, who worked underneath Brother Clyburn. And the reality is, you have to start early. You have to identify these leaders early. At my own alma mater, the University of North Carolina at Pembroke, I saw just recently they formed their own version of what is often referred to as SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. But now there is one of those kinds of organizations on the campus of my university and dealing with social change. I think if we can identify potential leaders, especially our younger brothers, those who have the propensity to move forward in this, those who have this aptitude, or those who can excel in this space, why not go ahead and give them the training that they need? Why not go ahead and pour into them that way? Because they're the ones who can go ahead and start making these changes now. Because 30, 40, 50, however many years ago, when the present generation was plotting out their moves to what's going on now, they had a plan. and they identified these leaders early. Sure, they pulled themselves up by the bootstraps, but somebody said, we're going to pour into them and we're going to invest in them. We're going to mentor them. So I think now is the time to go ahead and start identifying these leaders throughout the country, throughout the nation. There's a number of brothers running for elected offices, but how many of them have we been able to see, and how many of them have we been able to pour into in any way possible? Some of these things are as simple as those brothers who want to take initiative on their own college campuses. I think about Second Vice Grand Brother Caleb Love was telling me that one of the strategies that they've been using around him in a number of his circles is you bring somebody with you to the polls. You bring someone with you, whether that's walking, driving, carpooling, but even something as small as that. If there was someone who was thinking ahead like that, why not go ahead and push them forward and set them on the path?
I think you made me think of, too, that the initiative that we have in Omega, that a father takes his son to the poll. A grandfather takes his grandson to the poll. And we've been seeing some of the pictures of that going around that have been simply beautiful. But I like that idea of mentoring young people. And we think this institute might be a good thing, too. That Omega Network for Action also has sent out the names of all the Omegas that are running for office all over the country. So often we don't know who's who, but we actually have a list under the leadership of Cedric Spencer, and we've sent that out. We'll be also sending out some endorsements this week, too, about other races, like you talked about, DL, about Doug Jones in Alabama. And so the Omega Network for Action will be endorsing him tomorrow as well. So you'll see a lot of the Divine Nine have decided to create PACs and 501c4s so that those organizations can speak more loudly in this election and in elections going forward. And that would also be my response to that particular question. We were talking about the intimidation on election day, and I do want to point this out. There are steps a voter can take who encounters difficulty in voting or whose voting credentials are challenged in any way. And we would ask them to call Election Protection Hotline, 866-687-8683. That's 866-OUR-VOTE. And also in every state, there are contact numbers if there are issues that you may have at the voting booth. You should familiarize yourself with all those numbers prior to heading out to vote. Since we were talking a minute ago about militias. Oh, Steve's in the house. Steve Harvey, how you doing, brother?
How you brothers doing, man?
Man, good to see you, man.
My apologies to you, Grand. You know, I'm tech ignorant, so I've been on there 30 minutes trying to do this. All my kids is gone, so I've been in straight trouble. I'm so sorry. Rickey Smiley, what's up with you, boy? DL Hewley, Original Kings, baby. All the way back. And to all the brothers online. Brother Grand, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, man. Always good to see your face, brother.
Hey, man, it was a struggle, but I'm here. I only got a few minutes, but I did the best I could.
That's all right, man. We'll take it. We're just talking about the importance of voting in this particular election during this particular time, Steve, and that might be a good place for you to come in. Why is voting important at this time?
We got together, me, DL, and Rickey, and we decided to use our platforms because we control the airwaves. And we got all the morning and afternoon drive. There's nobody bigger than the three of us. And so we've been pushing as hard as we can on a unified front as men of Omega to make sure that everybody gets to the polls. Look, man, the best thing that I've been saying on my show is, you know, we have a chance to push this Black Lives Matter movement over the finish line. But in order to make them understand that Black lives really do matter, you gotta show them something. So you gotta prove it to them. You know, you can ask them to make Black Lives Matter, but they're not gonna give it to us. They're just not going to give it to us. You make your life matter when you show them that your vote matters. When we start voting people in and out of position of power, money, and position, then we start getting their attention, and then everybody goes out and says, oh, Black lives really do matter. Because look, until we make some political change, we just protesting. The protesting is good. I'm proud of the young people that's out there on the front lines. And I'm pretty sure that a change is on the horizon. But the way to make a change is to vote. And that's why I've been pushing it from the Black Lives Matter angle and just doing the best we can on our show. And I really want to thank my brothers, because as soon as we got together, Brother Graham, we were just on a unified front.
Beautiful.
It wasn't a, hey, man, can y'all make time, or none of that. Rickey and DL jumped right on it, man. So we've been at it. This is the first year in radio I haven't taken a vacation this year because of the COVID. I was trying to keep people safe, and now we're trying to get rid of this White House administration. So as I want the election to be over, so his administration can be over, and I'm going somewhere. And I don't really drink, but I think I'm going to drink heavy somewhere.
I'll come with you and show you how it's done. I promise.
I'll have a drink and a cigar. I never have, but I will.
Come on, Rick.
I'll show you how it's done. Don't worry, brother. I got you.
I know you will.
I'm going to smoke a cigar when DL come to Birmingham this weekend, so I'll be waiting for you.
Absolutely. To piggyback, somebody asked about voter. You know what has happened, and I think that no one has anticipated this. The fact that Black people are turning out early, all the voter suppression mechanisms they had in place primarily dealt with us going day of voting, but we've done it early. So the best way is the punch you never see coming that knocks you out. Mm-hmm. And if we want to, and one of the things I think that they didn't anticipate is high engagement. They think that you have to be excited. And I made this point earlier. Black people vote to survive. We ain't got to be excited. Mm-hmm. But the fact, go early, and go together. Like that old African proverb, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Mm-hmm. It is our togetherness that will keep us safe and moving forward. So I think going early and going together is millions and millions. We are very much overrepresented. You know this, Brother Paul. You're a young millennial, and I'm sure you have the stats. We are overrepresented in early voting. Over. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I think that they didn't anticipate that. And I think it'd be great if we got all the voting done before the day of the vote. Without that early. Mm-hmm. And secondly, the mechanisms they have in place wouldn't have time. You can't intimidate somebody at the polls when they're already gone.
Right. Let me ask you this, because we talked about this earlier. About 13 to 14% of African American male voters voted for Trump in 2016. The Trump administration is shooting for 20% for this election. And Steve, I don't know, I talked about this for a second, that the 5 fraternities have come together on a Black Men Vote initiative to get an additional 1 million Black men to vote in this election. But how is it possible that Black men could possibly overlook the president telling AOC and the squad to go back to their country?
Well, look,
or Maxine Waters, a low IQ individual, Omarosa, a dog, Senator Harris, nasty and a monster. How can a Black man vote for someone who talks about sisters like that?
It's a funny thing, because I get to see them on that level where we all try to get ourselves to, right? I talk to well-off people all the time. What you have in this small sector of Black men is this yearning so badly to be accepted that they think that being accepted is to cooperate and participate in it and go along with it. So they ignore what is happening to us because they so busy trying to be them. What we all know who have become successful, you're not going to ever be them. I don't care what you do. I don't care how hard you try. You are not going to be them. You will always be them. You will always be the only Black in the room. You will always be the only one of 2 Blacks at the country club. You're going to always be the only 1 or 2 Blacks down in corporate America in that position. You're going to always be them. I don't care what you do. You will never ever fit into their scheme of things. You will always be looked at as them. And it's a sad thing when Black men think that if they can play golf with them, that if they can yacht with them, that if they can sit with them, then they can be with them. And that's a sad mistake, man. And you see it, all you got to do is look at the Senate and the Congress and how they vote and how they shake and move. They do nothing to include us. And the sickening part for those who get at such a high level, they forget how they got there. If we don't take care of the people who shop at Walmart, we all in trouble. Mm-hmm. They don't, look, man, people who buy our tickets to come to our shows, those are our folks. See, they made us who we were before any of us crossed over into mainstream America. Before I was a game show host or author or any of that. I was BET. Mm-hmm. I was Black Entertainment Television. I was Showtime at the Apollo. I was Black Night at the Comedy Club. Mm-hmm. That's what I was. When we were on the Kings of Comedy tour, 98% of that room every night was Black folks. But then some of us get where we going and we act like we ain't with them no more. So our obligation is to take care of those that are affected by policy. Look, if you get enough money, it don't matter who the president is, but not enough of us got enough of that money. So we got to keep pushing.
There you go. Who'd like to add in on that? DL, anything on that?
Well, I think that ultimately it's like Bernie used to say, who you with? It's really a simple thing. I think that I've noticed a disturbing trend, and I think particularly last election cycle. I think that there were a lot of Black men who were misogynist and saying, "I'm not going to vote for women." I heard that a lot. I also heard there is something attractive to a lot of people about this bombacity, the things that Trump does and says appeal to some people. It does. It's like, have you ever? I remember I was watching this interview, and Michelet was talking about she thought that she was being shown love when a man hit her, when he abused her. Mm-hmm. And I think those men tend to be those kind of people who think love is that, who think caring is that. And it's just like you didn't have that. Jared couldn't have said we're lazy. Donald Trump tells us nobody's done more for Black people than me. Like. And he talks about the unemployment rate being the lowest it's been in history, so he can't be racist. The unemployment rate during slavery was 0%. I'm pretty sure they didn't like us either. So ultimately, it is who you with. And we all have there's politically, and we're not literally even talking about Republicans and Democrats. I've known people from all kinds of political stripes. We're talking about this man, and what he has done to our people. Where he tells you he lets you give him credit for an economy he literally did not create.
Absolutely.
You're so willing to believe that he was better than the Black man that you don't even take time to understand. He releases 20 people from prison. President Obama released 1,000, but his is better. Like the white man's ice is cold. Mm-hmm. It's not about our political ideology. It is about what is, because there are people who naturally have this is their slant, and we're talking about this man who is morally and to me, when you look at Kanye and Donald Trump, they're exactly the same kind of man. Exactly, neither one of them reads. Both of them are demagogues, and I've seen both their wives naked. They're the same kind of man. And they ultimately have the same level of disregard for us. Hey man, I'm a new Q. Y'all gotta let me. Come on, brother Vice. Come on now.
I got a couple more kids I gotta get through college. You got to.
I'm sorry. Oh, we were still on. I'm sorry.
Hey, brother Grant. What you don't know is I've sat in the dressing room with this brother for 4 years, weekend after weekend, with him, Said, and Bernie. I have heard some things, and we have shared some things and some cigars that most people would not find funny at all. I mean, our level of comedy is, when you backstage with the Kings, it was like it was crazy, man. We would say stuff that was brilliantly funny, but it wasn't quite ready. You know, as soon as a tragic event happens, we start writing the jokes. We know we can't tell them publicly because y'all not ready for them. But at the third eye we got, it see the joke immediately. You know, it ain't our fault that, you know, 22 people got shot in the Lubies. We didn't do it. So here come the jokes, but you got to wait 3-4 weeks to tell them. DL is probably, of all of us, the most he's the best speaker amongst us, especially politically. And if you let him talk long enough on any other subject too. But DL is the best among us. And Rickey just bows down to age at this point. That's all Rickey Smiley do. Rickey stay out the way and let the old cues go at it.
I do.
But Rickey Smiley has been on the forefront of this thing too, man. And I'm just saying all this because I got to go because I got that interview that I'm supposed to be doing in 5 minutes. So I got to try to set up this Zoom call. And if it take me as long to set up this Zoom call, my black man is in a world of trouble. And let me say something else. I never heard of StreamYard. I don't know what it is. If you'd have seen me trying to Google StreamYard, I had my sister on the phone, man. So I'm gonna get over here and just in case she makes this phone call in 5 minutes so I could be online. But I wanted to say, Brother Grand, what you're doing is absolutely fabulous. I appreciate the leadership that you're showing for all of our brothers nationwide and internationally. The growth of Omega Psi Phi under your leadership has been phenomenal with Vice Grand Rickey Lewis there. And this brother D.L. Hughley, man, I can't even tell you how it warmed my heart to have him come into the fold, man. And all you done with Teddy Ginn and Lord have mercy, George Clinton. I almost cried when George Clinton came in for very personal reasons. But I love you, brothers, and I thank y'all for having me, man. And let's stay strong and let's do our due diligence and get him out of here.
Yeah, we're gonna do it, man. We love you, man. We appreciate you jumping on, brother. Take care.
All right.
Hey, man, love y'all.
I know, bro, Grant. I know you ain't supposed to, but
I can do it. I can throw it up there too, Steve.
One time. Thank you, brother.
All right, man. Brothers, we're gonna continue our conversation for a second here. I have one
Brother Grant.
Yeah.
I got to dip too. I got 2 grandkids in here. I got to get them to bed.
Do your thing. We'll go ahead. See you next round. Let me ask this one to DL. You take care, brother.
Love you, man.
All right, love you too, brother.
Roop.
DL, let me ask you and Paul this last question about. We talked a little bit about. You mentioned Kanye, but I was talking about the African American male voter.
Sure.
How does Kanye's campaign, Ice Cube's contract with Black America, and 50 Cent's comments knowingly or unknowingly play into this conversation of them trying to get 20% of the African American male vote?
Well, I think that I've made my opinions known about all those things, but ultimately I will say this. What they demand from us is a certain amount of selfishness. Now, I think that Kanye's perspective is a little more skewed, and I think his is a whole different thing. I think that 50 Cent is more selfish, where he just wants to say he cares about the money more than anything. But I think Ice Cube had a approach that it was well, it was well researched, but I think that the desire, just kind of the sameism, is crazy. And when you talk about bipartisanship, which really doesn't exist, bipartisanship means that I peel off a few people on the opposing party who are in probably a district that is not conducive to their political viewpoint, and I get them to come along with me. Mm-hmm. But generally, political parties have their things that they're behind, and none of them are perfect. But the idea that they're the same, like when he calls them the same, do you really honestly believe that Joe Biden and Donald Trump are the same kind of men with the same kind of leadership? Do you believe they think the same things about Black people? And even if they did something earlier and they have said, I've done these things and I want to make amends, do you believe that is possible? But do you believe Donald Trump, who right now will not even admit that anybody's dying. So I think that you could have the best of it. I remember on my radio show, I had this conversation. I said, and I said it out loud. I think Ice Cube got mad at me for saying that Trump was using him. And then he got mad at Eric Trump for using him. So you can't. We're not talking about Republicanism. We're talking about a man who only sees black people as useful tools and caricatures. Name me one person that has met with him, a black person, that wasn't an athlete, an actor, a rapper, or a comedian. Name me one, and that tells me, when you tell me who's in the room, I'll tell you how serious it is. When you tell me who's in the meeting, what is it that we all have in common? We're all entertainers. So we'll entertain the masses and distract them. If you were really serious, you'd listen to the CDC, the CBC, the Congressional Black Caucus. You don't have them in there. You don't have sociologists. You don't have lawmakers. You don't have doctors. You have us. And that tells me what you think of us, and that tells me how much input and how much import you put on.
Good stuff. Paul, you want to add anything to that as we get ready to wrap up?
Yeah, absolutely. Bro Hughley's clearly the authority between the two of us. But I honestly think, you said a word that's been kind of in my mind since the last question when we talked about black men voting for Trump. And that word that sticks out to me is that S word, selfish. I think that some people attempt to do the right thing in an unorthodox way and it backfires on them and blows up in their face. And others simply do things because it's for their own personal benefit and for their own personal gain. I'm typically a moderator and someone who mediates between sides. But when wrong is wrong, wrong is wrong. And the current president of the United States is selfish. He does not care about those people who he is pandering to. He does not care about what they think. He does not care about what they feel. He cares about advancing his own agenda. And when we talk about black men and black people attempting to do the right thing, we cannot be selfish. We just can't be selfish. And my message to young voters, and specifically to young black men who look like me, men who I grew up with, young black men who just turned 18 last week, whenever it was, is this. And they can feel the way that they want to feel, but this is something I say to my brothers, and I've said it to my own younger brother before. It's not about you. It's not about you. When we were enslaved, it was not about us. It was about our children. It was about those who were to come after us. When it came time for us to vote and we were persecuted and potentially were facing death, it was not about us. It was about the future. When it comes time for you to put food on the table for your son, for your daughter, to provide for those in your family, it's not about you. And it never has been about you. And that's what makes black people so resilient. Because since our ancestry was pulled from the shores of Africa and dragged through the Middle Passage, and in 1619 were brought to Virginia, it's never been about them and their immediate gratification. Part of the issue now is the immediate gratification has become so glamorized by the media and so glamorized by our popular culture that any distraction will take them away from the purpose. Any distraction takes them away from it. No matter what Kanye's reason was for trying to put his name on the ballot, no matter what these other high profile people are, whatever space that they're in, it's a distraction. And that distraction takes away from the options that we have to rectify the situation. But if I were to say anything, it's just for those men, for those whoever who are only in it for themselves and their instant gratification, for the riches and not for the wealth and the health of those to come. It's not about you.
True.
That's good stuff, Paul. That I hate Rickey missed that, because that's a perspective from young people he would have really appreciated. Brothers, we're at the end of this thing. We're a minute out from closing. Let me just say a couple of things and go to you for any last thoughts. I don't see any more questions in the queue. So, oh, Lord, there is a whole bunch of questions in the queue. I didn't scroll down. Let me, I'm sorry, but let's see. What is the real plan to disrupt the Electoral College? Is it a system no longer needed? Maybe DL, you want to say anything about that?
Obviously, it's a system. It's an antiquated notion. I think that when you consider that it doesn't reflect the current population current population, or even if ultimately it should be, the founding fathers didn't want the bigger states to rule over the small, but now we have situations where the smaller states rule over the large. And like you've had between George Bush and now Donald Trump, you've had 2 times where the Electoral College didn't work, where the wishes of the majority didn't get satisfied because of the whims of the Electoral College. And I think it would make us a better country if you had to vote and not regionally, not say what they want in Pennsylvania or in Arizona or these swing states. I think we get the kind of government that was reflective of what the people's desires are and their hopes are. And if we spend this much time dismantling Robert E. Lee, relics of the Confederacy, the Electoral College is one. And I think that when that may be one of our asks, because if we all admit that these monuments to the Confederacy hold us back and are hurtful, then nothing is a bigger monument to the Confederacy than Electoral College, and it really definitely impacts the way that we govern, that we live our lives to a large extent. And so I think that it has to go, and I think that the way you do that is to put people in place and demand that we have a government, a system of democracy. No democracy in the world has this kind of system, where they have 50 different elections. That I think that we should have one election and the will of the people is done.
Right.
And then you have politicians who have to run that way and who have to govern that way. And if we can tear statues down because they're relics of the past, then the Electoral College is. I'd keep 10 statues of Robert E. Lee if they gave me the Electoral College.
They're telling me we're done. I see a note that says the NAACP has a transportation program. It talks about how do we continue the momentum. I think with the kind of conversations that we have here. As I close, I would just simply say thanks to you brothers for coming out and participating. Thanks to Steve Harvey, and thanks to Rickey Smiley for coming out. The Divine Nine has some great partnerships during this time with When We All Vote and the NAACP. We did a town hall with Sybil Wilkes, as I spoke about, and Derek Johnson. We also penned a letter to the campaigns regarding addressing the racial wealth disparity gap that we see in this country. And we're excited about the remedies that we've put there. Again, thanks goes out to our panelists, but also to the audience for listening and giving us questions. We've had successful presidential elections during the Civil War, the Great Depression, and 2 world wars. And with the large number of Black people that have already voted early, it is my belief that we will show the world that we will have a successful presidential election, even in a pandemic. We don't want anyone to sit on the sidelines. I thank all of you all for coming out tonight. And with that, we'll close and give it back to Brother Cedric Spencer.
Brother Grant, thank you. Thank you to the panelists as well. We greatly appreciate everyone joining us this evening. Had a great conversation. As Brother Anderson said, it's not about you. So let's just make sure we get out and vote in our community. Thanks to the brothers of Mega Psi Phi. Thanks to the audience. Everyone have a good night. Thank you very much. Take care.